The civil war in Gaza is over. Wow, that was quick. Maybe what we're really seeing is a complex proxy battle armed and fueled by a host of outside powers, but that would never fit on the banner at the bottom of the screen. You are here on the map. The Middle East explodes, or so the news channels would have you believe. We cool the hype and take a look at what's really happening in Gaza and Lebanon. How the car bomb became a symbol of the 21st century assassination and the Middle East conflict. Its roots are way deeper than that. And why are these people screaming? This is not your average walkout. The backstory behind South Africa's biggest strike since the end of apartheid. Hello, I'm Avi Lewis. Welcome to On the Map. Tonight, state of emergency. The map of the Palestinian territories has clearly changed. The political divide between Hamas and Fatah has become a geographic one, with Hamas now clearly in control of the Gaza Strip and Fatah still the authority in the West Bank. We'll explore the wider implications of this new reality in a moment. But first, let's take a look at how the story's been packaged so far. A Shia mosque bombed for a second time in Iraq. The car bomb assassination of a high-level anti-Syrian MP in Lebanon. And fighting between Hamas and Fatah in overdrive in Gaza. Despite the fact that these three events are probably unrelated apart from geography, the North American news machine couldn't hold back on the hype.
Let's lead our broadcast today with a Fox News alert where gunmen ruling the streets of Gaza.
A new wave of violence in the Middle East.
I think we're entering the slippery slope of a civil war again.
Spiraled into an all-out civil war.
Just how well-armed, just how well-equipped Hamas has become.
On one side is the ruling party Hamas, the other side is Fatah, a civil war.
Sensational? Absolutely. Convenient for putting in a little box labeled the crazy Middle East conflict? Sure. But this kind of coverage is not exactly helping us understand what's going on. So for an alternative take, we're joined by former British intelligence officer and now head of the Conflict Forum, Alastair Crooke. He joins me now from Beirut. Welcome to On the Map.
Thank you very much.
Let's start with events in Beirut and the bombing yesterday that killed Walid Eido. Who benefits from that assassination, and why do you think it happened now?
There are a lot of speculation who might be responsible, but I think the most obvious candidates are probably the least likely to be responsible for the particular assassination that took place last night of an MP. I think what we're seeing is a degree of ratcheting up of instability and insecurity. The city is very tense at the moment. Hardly anyone is on the street. When I went home last night, there was almost nobody but troops out on the streets. No cars, no one going out at all. Everyone seems to be just waiting for the next event to take place. So there's a great deal of tension, and there is a saying here that when the oven is heated for cooking, there are many cooks who seek to bake in it. And I think that's the problem we have here. There are many potential people who would welcome instability in Lebanon and could see the advantages of a destabilized government here.
Now, when you talk about the obvious suspects, the one talked about most, of course, is Syria, since the MP who was killed was part of the anti-Syrian governing coalition. And in fact, with his assassination, the parliamentary majority of the governing coalition is down to 3 seats. And one of the government ministers said yesterday that Syria was trying to literally liquidate the parliamentary majority. That's an extraordinary approach, if that's true. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that may be just perhaps an emotional reaction to events rather than a rational one. I think it's very unlikely to benefit Syria, of all countries, action at this time. As you know, they're on the brink of a changed relationship with the United States, possibly, also with Israel. Israel has made political feelers towards Syria. It looks possibly as if Syria is just at this moment on the brink of escaping from a degree of isolation that it's been in for some years. So for it to act in the way that has been suggested would seem to be extremely irrational.
Let's talk about the fighting in Gaza. The talk around Gaza has been civil war, civil war, civil war.
I think the word civil war is actually the wrong expression. I can understand why people use it, because when you look at it on the television screens, and for many of the Palestinians in Gaza who are experiencing this conflict, it may seem like that. but in practice it's something different. What we're seeing is a very concerted, deliberate military operation executed by Hamas, and it's aimed not at Fatah as a whole, but at one sector of Fatah, one security section of Fatah called preventive security, which is associated with Mohammed Dahlan, and it is not aimed at the other elements. And it's quite notable that the armed forces, if you like, the police and the army of the Palestinian Authority have not participated.
Is this actually factional fighting as we get it reported, or is this a proxy conflict in your view? And if so, who are the real players? Draw us a map.
This is essentially about power. In 2006, Hamas won the elections, overwhelmingly parliamentary elections. And according to the outcome of that, they should have had responsibility for security. But what really happened was that the United States and the Europeans, all of them encouraged Fatah not only not to hand over those powers, but indeed to try and claw back the powers from the government.
So we now have a situation, as many people are saying today, including you, that Hamas is essentially going to be in effective control of most of Gaza very shortly. And are we seeing the emergence of two Palestinian states? It's ironic in that there isn't even one yet.
Well, actually, I think Hamas is in control of Gaza now. All of the Fatah leaders have either left Gaza or in the process of asking Israel to be evacuated from Gaza. So I think you can say that Hamas is in control of it. It's not a state. It's very much an open prison still. I believe that Hamas will consolidate their control in Gaza and will start to manage and administer it. And the first thing they'll try and do is to try and establish law and order and a degree of tranquility to daily life. And I think they've already started this.
Okay,
you can see this from their
the
disarming of a number of the plans.
I'm not sure that I see any agenda to bring tranquility to daily life in fighting, in heavy fighting, in military control of a territory. Those two things seem completely at odds to me.
Well, of course, not at this time. You can't. I mean, they haven't completed, if you like, the objectives. The aim is to try and bring about security in the province both of Gaza and in West Bank, because that's overwhelming what their constituents have been calling for.
You have been a very active advocate for engagement with Hamas for some years. In fact, some have suggested that you lost your job in British intelligence because your advocating engagement with Hamas became so out of step with British and American and Israeli policy. This division now of Hamas in Gaza, Fatah in the West Bank, and a sort of separating of the parties in their own territories, what does that do to the prospect of an actual engagement, of a negotiation, of anyone sitting down at a table now?
Well, actually, just to be clear, what I've always argued is engagement with reality more than engagement with a particular movement or faction. And I've always believed that if you're going to find any political solution, you cannot simply put your head in the sand and ignore movements that have legitimacy and credibility amongst their own people, as clearly Hamas do have. You have to have an inclusive process. What the European and the American policy has failed to do is actually try and encourage the two movements to work together to try and find a united Palestinian policy that can be effective. Instead of which, they have deliberately tried to divide the policy, divide the two parties, given weapons and money to one in order to try and undermine and remove one from power. And I think the politics of division has led to this mess that we have in Gaza, and it's always, after conflict, very hard to put politics back together again.
Thanks for being on the map, Alastair.
My pleasure. Thank you.
When we come back, a closer look at the workhorse of modern urban warfare. And out of South Africa, why are these people screaming?